really object to about Elon Musk is not just what he says, but what he allows other people to say.
In a real time, you get them exposed, and that's what they fear the most.
The fear of a world of slipping out of their control.
Why is the DSA such a central plank of the EU machinery?
Well, I think it is very important to see that was the actual response from the European political class behind the kind of thick smiles in Davos and the welcome Trump. We hope to cooperate and everything. The real feeling in the European political class was what came out in the European Parliament, with them queuing up one after other to demand more and more censorship, the banning of Musk and X from Europe, and all of that. I think as much what I've always thought about the fear of freedom of speech, which is the fear of democracy, which is the fear of people unleashed, the fear of a world of slipping out of their control, and the only way they can hope to control it is by controlling what we're allowed to say, and therefore, as we've talked about many times over the recent years, try and control what people are allowed to think and do. And so, free speech becomes the absolute cutting edge in all of these political battles. So their absolute first instinct is to try and control it, and that's what. Immediately talking about extending the the Digital Surveillance Act, or as one of the Hungarian MEPs from the Patriots for Europe characterised it rather brilliantly, the Digital Surveillance Act, which I think is what we should all call it from now on. That's their kind of knee-jerk instinctive reaction is we've got to have more censorship, more control, because otherwise we feel things are slipping away from us. I mean, what they really object to about Elon Musk is not just what he says, but what he allows other people to say. And that's what they really would like to put a lid on.
And also there is an element where in a real time you can see a response and exposing their lies. So with Trump's inauguration, there were lots of congratulations coming from different world leaders, among them Donald Tusk, to President Trump. And straight away, there were posts, screenshots of what he said about Trump in the past, calling him a Russian spy, and there are proofs for that. And it wasn't just common citizens doing that, also members of Trump's incoming government. They pointed it out to him that, oh, it's interesting what you're saying now, and a screenshot of what he said in the past. So in a real time, you get them exposed, and that's what they fear the most. Yeah. They are being ridiculed.
Instead of forget, it's a bit like, and also like then say on Musk giving a Nazi salute, led the rally and everything. In the old days, you had a still of him doing that on the front page of a newspaper, and it might have looked quite convincing. Now you can just run it frame by frame online, and everyone's just ridiculing the eye. Well, unless they're predisposed not to, but anybody with eyes to see can ridicule the idea.
Yeah, and also finding hundreds of clips of all kinds of what exactly. Making great things.
Exactly. So it's much more difficult than to, as we say, control the narrative in those circumstances.
Yes, but that's what they're doubling down on. One of the things I think is really noteworthy in what they're doing with the revamped DSA is, so there's now this question, are companies like Facebook really going to sign up to enforcing this? And that's been the key way that it's handled so far. But what they've announced is that they're expanding the role of NGOs and so-called civil society actors into the censorship process. This has always been part and parcel of the DSA, but they're really doubling down on it. So there's this attempt to kind of like coalesce a new kind of anti-democratic, anti-speech.
So it's basically saying, all right, Facebook's getting rid of their gatekeepers, fact checkers, truth police. The EU is going to have its own truth police to try and control what can be published or not within our borders.
They already had the NGOs around. A Polish organization called Demagog.pl. They actually wrote an open letter to the government highlighting why their role is so important in the upcoming presidential elections in Poland, and the fact that Zuckerberg decided to leave the censorship behind doesn't mean a thing. They want to continue, and people straight away pointed out that also this is their business model. This is the way they work. And even if there was this good intentions on checking the facts and so on, you look at the bios of people employed by these organizations, and they are really from far left and left organizations and political magazines and so on. So, and all of them humanists. So even when they fact check the science, they know nothing about the science. So the comment section that the community nodes on X would have more accuracy than them deciding on what is science, what is not science.
So those people are already there, but they're going to be expanding their role, and they're going to be rolling what were voluntary measures into the compulsory ones under the Act. So everything becomes more and more under the control of the law. And if the big tech are not going to cooperate, which remains to be seen, but if they're not going to cooperate in the way that they have done up to now, presumably there's going to be more talk of big fines and bans for those who won't do as they're told.
Yeah, and this is not just this is not just about people having posts removed and things like this, because we've got some big elections coming up. As you say, there'll be a Polish election, we've got a German election coming up. At some point, there may well be a big French election that comes along. And they've already signaled their willingness, as they did in Romania, to use the kind of the impetus of the Digital Services Act and the general kind of free speech panic to not just kind of remove posts, but actually call into question elections.
Disinformation is going to be the knee-jerk, the basic response, the kind of theme of every election discussion in Europe over the next God knows how many years. Everything that goes against the centre is going to be down to disinformation, Russian bots, fake news, hate speech, and all of that. And asking the courts, as they did in Romania in the most outrageous fashion, to basically erase an election result because it didn't suit their purposes. The polls in Romania, by the way, indicate that the candidate they stopped winning is well ahead now, because that's what tends to happen. If you ban parties and the courts say you can't have the president you chose, people tend to vote for them more rather than less. So we still have democracy to hope for, but we can see that the disinformation narrative is going to be the kind of cutting edge of the anti-democratic debate over the next few years.